things you'll need for this. What we're doing is dyeing this set of scales on this Esee, this orange Rit dye. So things you're going to need, obviously you're going to need your dye, your knife scales. I prefer to take the knife scales off, so you're going to need some sort of bit and driver. You're going to need something to put your dye in that you're not worried about it staining. I've also got a pot of water sitting on the stove. Dial soap. It says to add a little bit of detergent. Don't really need this, but you might want, if you were doing a pocket knife, you'd want some kind of lubricant. You're going to want some kind of stir stick to stir up the dye. And then we've got isopropyl alcohol so that we can clean off these scales prior to dyeing them. So that's what you need thus far. We'll break this knife down and we'll get to dyeing these scales. The other thing I left out, obviously you're going to want gloves, some paper towels. So we've got our knife. Let's go ahead and put our gloves on. That way, once we take these scales off and clean them, we don't get any additional finger oils on there. Let's take this other. Well, that screw will take me 3 days to find. Actually, no, I can see it. Okay, so we got all our hardware taken out. We're going to set it aside, keep track of what goes where. All right, let's get our knife out of the way. What we're going to do is just take our handle scales. Probably not ideal to do this on canvas now that I think of it, because the whole isopropyl alcohol drying fast. Well, actually, yeah, that still dries off pretty fast. So go ahead and clean those off, spray them. By the time we get this water boiled and we get ready to dye these scales, they'll be dry again. So spray them off, wipe them down real good. Make sure you got all the oils off so that this dye adheres well. Really, I should be using more shop cloths, but I had these other paper towels nearby, so that's what we're using. And apparently this other scale's just getting doubled up on. All right, so we're just gonna wipe everything off real good. So we got them cleaned off. We're letting them air dry a bit. What we're gonna do is take our water. We're gonna add a small amount of our dial soap per the instructions. And the dye really should be measured out in parts, but done this a few times and just a decent little amount will usually do you just fine. So that's probably, so make sure you shake your dye up before you put it in your container. What we're gonna do is bring our water on the stove to a boil. We're gonna take our soup can that's got our dye, detergent, and really we should have put a tablespoon of detergent in, but a good squeeze from the pump does the trick. We shook up our dye. I added one little more pour to it. We're bringing our water to a boil over here. And then what we're gonna do is take this and we'll set it, I guess we could go ahead and really just set it in here. As we're bringing our water to a boil, what we need is for this to be 140 degrees or higher. I'm not necessarily gonna throw a thermometer in it, but we're gonna bring this to a boil, let it start to boil this, and we'll turn down our settings so it stays at a slow rolling boil. We'll stir up our dye real good, and then we'll dip these knife scales. So what I've done is just taken a little piece of titanium wire that I have from doing some anodizing, and heat treat stuff that I had left over. You could use a coat hanger, a piece of wire, anything you don't really care about that you could dip and it won't get destroyed. So hung these scales on them now that they're clean and dry, and as soon as we get this to a boil, we're going to dip it. You know, dip times are going to vary based on your materials, but my understanding is canvas micarta like this, some of your other FRN type materials or plastics, you know, about 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Some stuff could take dye as little as 10 or 20 seconds. You may have something that takes even longer, a minute or two. If you're doing some kind of cotton material, it's definitely going to take even longer than that to soak in. So anyway, just some tips. All right, so we're getting to a boil here. So I'm just going to make sure we're stirred up good. Kind of get an idea of what it does to my stick. Yeah, I'm going to say that's going to leave us a light orange color for sure. You stir it just a little, make sure you get a good, no air bubbles or anything. Because this is micarta, I'm definitely not worried about it melting really. Those are going to come out an interesting color. I'm going to leave those just a little bit longer. We're going to let those sit maybe a minute. Dip them fast, see if we can get some of those air bubbles off. I think those are going to look cool. We'll throw them on here. So as you can see, they came out wet with micarta. It's obviously pretty dark, but in the spots it's starting to dry, you're really starting to see those oranges come through. So once these are dry, we'll come back and take a look and we'll get them back on this knife. I'm going to start cleaning up some of this other stuff while these dry. Okay, so these are pretty well dry. We're gonna make sure we pat them off okay. Make sure they're good. Yep, yep. That's coming off on our paper towel. I think we're soaked in pretty good. All right, let's put this thing back together. So, here's our now orange scales. You could put a little more dye, bring a little richer color, maybe get a darker. This is a pretty light orange, and those were fairly dark tan scales already. So I'm kind of happy with how that turned out. So now what we're gonna do is just literally reassemble. So we're gonna take our scale, put it back in place, drop our screw in, drop our other screw in. And at this point, you probably would want to Loctite these. All right, so that one's screwed in. This center post kind of shifts a little. So you kind of got to hold it in place, get it in, and then flip everything over. When we put this other scale on, it's going to tighten everything together. Got our finished scales back on the knife. There you go, ready to go in the pack for hunting season.